Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. As always, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for the emails, the tweets, if that's what you call them anymore, the messages, all the stuff that you've sent the show's way and my way personally. Really do appreciate that. Keep that coming. And of course, thank you guys so much for joining us here, talking about something so many of us are so passionate about. I don't know how you could be a coach and not be passionate about this. And I've had quite a few episodes that have approached this topic in different angles, and I always want to keep talking about it because it's just so fundamental to what we do as coaches. And what we're going to be talking about today is the concept of total program buy-in. And that is exactly what it sounds like in its totality, the process of getting all the important stakeholders from obviously the players, coaching staff, the parents, everyone, administration, everyone, making sure that everyone's on board with what the program is doing, what you as a coach are trying to do, and that the program's moving in the right direction, a positive direction, and everybody is bought into whatever the vision is of that program. So this is something I love. You guys know I love talking about culture and love talking about things of this nature. So I'm really excited to get into this with the head coach joining me of the Nordhoff High School boys basketball program, Coach Kyle Poe. Kyle Poe, excuse me, is joining us here today. Coach, appreciate you being able to carve out some time to talk to us and for us to make this happen. How are things going?
Things are going well. Thanks for having me, Coach Hernandez. It's always a pleasure to get to talk hoops. So thank you for supplying the platform for us. And I'm really looking forward to today's topic. As a basketball coach, you know, you touched on it. As a coach of anything, and that, for that matter, is building a program is having buy-in. So just going to speak from my experiences, the good and the bad, and yeah, just looking forward to getting that topic started.
Awesome, Coach. As we talked about a little bit before we started recording, I know that this particular stop along your coaching journey is you're in the first year of this particular part of your coaching journey. But let's backtrack a little bit and talk to the listeners for us, Coach, about your basketball journey, your coaching journey, and how did you ultimately end up at Nordhoff High School?
Right. So, extensive basketball background. I was brought up in a home. Grew up in Ventura, California. We're about 50 miles north of Los Angeles. Dad was a coach. Was very passionate about the game. Coached me throughout my youth in AAU, club basketball. And went to high school, Buena High School. Was a 3-year starter there. Was a team captain. And just really fell in love with the game. I had teachers there. I had a teacher there, my history teacher, who was, passionate about basketball and passionate about teaching kids. And I was like, maybe that's something I can do going forward. So I was lucky enough to continue my career in college. Obviously, I bounced around a bit. First year of college, I ended up at a junior college, Allen Hancock College in Santa Maria, California. That year, I was, I was a point guard, but I was undersized. I'm at 5'8", and I'm playing at a JUCO with extreme athletes, and just trying to get attached and adapted to that speed of play. So I redshirted that year. Kind of was like a team manager as well for the coach. Did a lot of things with the coaches, just kind of learning the game from a college standpoint. After a year there, after learning a lot, I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to. I had some NAIAs, some D3s, interest in high school. I took the JUCO route, just kind of give myself some time to develop. I ended up in Northern California at a school called Simpson University. It's an NAIA Division II school. While my time there, I spent some time on the JV team, the development team, and then suiting up for varsity, playing minutes, sporadically, just trying to get my feet in the door. Was really things were going really well there, just learning the system, getting to know the guys, and everyone has their story, and mine was my coach ended up not coming back after my sophomore year. And program turnover, a big one is, the coaches come in, they want to recruit their guys, they they want a certain personnel for what, fits their coaching. So, I was on the other side of that. So I was, now a junior in college, and what am I going to do next? So what kids try to do these days, transferring is so frequent now.
Yeah.
I had to, put together some film, go try to visit some schools, maybe to check back in with schools that I'd talked to previously. Went on a couple visits. Ended up at the University of Dallas, Division III school, in Texas, and got my foot in there. Coach was welcoming me. At the Division III level, they don't get a ton of transfers. It's not, not exactly how they all like to recruit. They like to recruit from the rigorous high schools, and a little different recruiting there. So, I was the only transfer on the team. So coming in, they kind of had their guys. But I was just so blessed to be able to play the game of basketball still in college and throughout, throughout the whole process of my coach getting fired and what's going on, and where am I going to go. I ended up at a school in an environment that did really well for me. There at Dallas is kind of where really the whole buy-in theory for me became something that I became passionate about. I always knew I was on a team, and I was always generally one of the better players per se. And then you get to college, and whoa, everyone's just as good as you, if not better. So
Yeah.
that's something
That's
that
an adjustment. Yeah.
that's an adjustment. As someone who's been a starter or been a captain, and now
Yeah.
you're in a different role. That's where those things start churning a little bit. And what do you see for yourself? What's realistic? What do the coaches see? So didn't get a ton of playing time at my time there at Dallas. I still was not. I didn't miss one practice. Was never late for a practice. A good example of just kind of buying into that culture is these kids that want to play at the next level. They got to understand they're going to take a sacrifice, and not all those sacrifices are going to be resulting in you playing a ton of minutes. So a good example is I flew back to my parents' place in California on Christmas Eve. Spent some time there with my family. Next day, had Christmas in the morning. Got on a plane on Christmas and flew back for practice.
I would go back. Yeah.
For an 8 a.m. practice on the 26th. So,
Right.
I'm sacrificing the time with my family, all those memories, all those things, because I got to be with my other family right now. I'm a college athlete, and that's I'm committed. And my teammates saw that in me. They knew, I knew the game. I started, the coaches, gave me some chances. I did play some in some reserve minutes, but ultimately just kind of grew as a person there, and after I was done playing my senior year, I got voted onto the all sportsmanship team by my coaching staff. So I was, didn't necessarily average the most points or the most assists or anything like that, but my coaches and my teammates recognized that I was committed. So I was named to the all sportsmanship team that year, and then won the character community award for the school. So
that's excellent.
Yeah, so it's something that, again, it's about sacrifices and how much are you committed and how much are you willing to buy in, even though you're not playing or as much as you might want to.
Right.
It's still about the team. So that's big one. Obviously, time was up, playing days were over. What am I going to do with my life? Well, like I said, I want to get into coaching. I had a coach back in the day that kind of inspired me. So ended up at Calvary Christian Academy in Texas. Coached there for a year. Coached pretty much every sport. Coached middle school basketball. Then I did the JV team, assistant for the varsity. Good experience there, coaching under Jeremy Fox. Gave me a chance. Forever thankful for that. We had a good run into the TAPS playoffs for the Texas Parochial and Private School Division. After that, though, I was like, you know what? I kind of want to go back home, see my family, get back there, but still continue the coaching journey. So ended up at Foothill Tech. Was there for 4 years. I was the head varsity assistant along with being the JV coach. We had some good teams, made some deep playoff runs. But that time, 4 years, I knew, you know what, I'm ready to be a head coach. So or at least I thought I was. So I applied to Villanova Prep, a school that was in Foothill Tech's league, the Frontier League. Got an interview, made it as a finalist. didn't get the job. So I was like, man, my first head coaching interview, I didn't get the job,
Yeah,
and that's part of it. It's a process,
for
right?
sure.
And that's, can't give up. So returned back to Foothill for the last year. This was the COVID year. So we didn't start till April.
Mm,
So we didn't start till April. In California, we finished like in May, I believe, right before June, and had a little playoffs. That job reopened at Villanova. The guy that was there was commuting to practice. It was like a 40-minute drive for him. So afterwards,
wow.
after a year, shortened season, he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. The job reopened, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is this is the opportunity. So of course, I applied again, and I got it the second time. So was super excited to be a varsity coach. Always wanted to be a head coach. Got into coaching. Was willing to do anything, working with the lower levels, even middle school levels, things like that. And eventually, then after 5 years of being an assistant at the JV level head coach, got my head coaching job. So super stoked on that. But when they hired me, we only had 2 weeks before the season started. So
No, that's tough.
so with the shortened season stuff, they didn't get a lot of time for prep. So we had 2 weeks, started 0-4, really tough season to start. But these kids, this is kind of where the buy-in thing comes, is they bought into what I was doing, what I was preaching, and we ended up becoming CIF champions that year. So we won our section.
Oh, that's
That
awesome.
was that was the first CIF championship at the school in basketball in 98 years. So
Wow,
uh,
that's
yeah,
great.
we set some historical goals landmarks for the school, history. It was phenomenal. It was to this day the funnest experience is those playoff
Mhm.
games away, and couple overtime games, couple buzzer beaters to send us to overtime. Yeah, great run. Had a great coaching staff that year. The kids bought in, the parents bought in, and a lot of it was just basketball. Obviously, we were talented, but we had to overcome a lot of stuff that we can get into a bit. But yeah, so I want to stay there forever. You win a championship, you think that's where you're going to be forever,
Of course.
and just quite didn't work out like that. I wanted to be, working at the school, and they didn't really have openings. And then another opportunity came up, and I ended up at Nordhoff High School, and it's about a mile from Villanova Prep. So I went from the small Catholic school to the big, per se, it's a small town, but the bigger public school across the street. So I'm at Nordhoff now. We're having a fun season. It's been a lot of bumps we've had to overcome, but we're getting there. We're learning, and yeah, this is an experience now where the buy-in has taken some time a bit. Being a new coach, having 13 new guys on varsity that haven't played before, so we're going through it though, and we're fighting, and we're still alive. But we're trying to still, stress our culture and get our values across to our kids, our parents, and even administration. So we're in the
Mhm.
process of it. Some things go faster than others sometimes.
So let me ask you about the adjustment that you went through having to go from a school where you saw a lot of success and you built something really great and had success to going to not only a different type of environment culturally, but also, a school that didn't exactly have the same level of success as you were used to. How was that shift for you mentally as a coach to go from one environment to another?
Yeah, it could be absolutely challenging. So, speaking from, the Villanova, where I came in, I had support from the parents initially. They just kind of saw how passionate I was. And then the kids, it kind of took them a little more time to buy into it. I would one of some of our better players, Sean Tuano, for instance, he was a CIF Player of the Year, averaged 22 and 12 for us. He was hard to coach at first, and we've had these conversations where he wanted to be the man, and I had to explain to him that we have a very talented group, 1 through 10, and then 1 through 5 was a great starting lineup for us. Was just getting them to understand that they need to work together to achieve these goals. So we had success, and things moved quicker than we imagined. But these kids bought in relatively quick. So when I came over to Nordhoff,
Hmm.
I was like, all right, I've seen the best of the best. We won a championship. It was our first year together. I can get this off the ground just like that. That's something I can do. It doesn't mean we're going to win the championship, but I can instill a culture in a couple months. Then that's been a completely different experience. You're inheriting players that had come from a different coaching staff, and a lot of them didn't play varsity. So you're teaching things, you're stressing things that they're still getting used to, and different concepts and just overall expectations. None of these kids sat in film rooms for an hour like we did in Villanova Prep, getting our guys ready. So that was all new to them. Yeah, so it's just really it's been an absolute challenge. And there's times where you want to pull your hair out of your head because you think you did it so well before, and then you realize that every environment, every community, it's gonna be different. You see success, you're like, oh, this is how you do it, this is how you do it, and then you go to the next location or the next school, and you're like, oh man, I'm gonna have to adjust a little bit. I'm gonna have to attack this a little different. So you think exactly what works, but you got to be willing to adjust. You got to be willing to make those changes because
Yeah.
every experience is going to be different.
Yeah, I think that I know one of the things I almost suffered from a little bit in the beginning of my coaching career was being at places that were successful, already had establishment of success, because it was a lot easier
Right.
for me to see success. And so I think it overinflated my own sense of who I was as a coach or
Hmm.
how great my coaching practices were. And then you go to a different stop and it's like, oh, you can't just do the stuff that you were doing before. Or if you
Right.
want to do the stuff you were doing before, you got to really build a lot
Yep.
more to get to that level. And like you even mentioned about, right, with like the film sessions, right? Like that, I'm sure at where you were before the Villanova stop that you were talking about, that was just the expectation and that was what everybody had already known. Whereas now it's like that's something that you have to go through the process of teaching how to watch film, which is probably not
Yep.
something maybe you had to do as much before.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, being in college, especially at the Division III level, I mean, that's how we prepared. We watched film for an hour or two, and then we went out there and practiced against it. And these kids, they don't, we're trying to stress to them the importance of it and how much preparation you have to put into it to really be successful.
Yeah.
So it's just expectations, like you said, and being realistic with yourself and just being willing to adjust because every kid's different. They want to be coached different, and if you want results, you're going to have to be able to ultimately just adjust. Again, being able to change what you do a little bit or tweak it, depending on the situation, depending on the person.
That leads into really well a follow-up question that I had before. It's actually part of the topic, but slightly before, the actual program buy-in topic itself, which is the idea that you talked about off air with me about the gym being your classroom. And I wanted to talk about that idea and have you expand on a little bit about how is your program structured or your practices or anything basketball related structured to kind of reflect that sort of statement.
Yeah, so ultimately, yeah, you're a basketball coach. I think it's fitting for this. This is the basketball teacher podcast. I mean, ultimately, we're teachers of the game, and we need to be in a situation, in a way, being able to teach not only the skills, the fundamentals, and all those things, but just a little bit about life too, just responsibility. For instance, it's teaching these life lessons where a kid, yeah, he texts you, hey coach, I'm not going to be at practice, or it's 10 minutes before practice. You have to take that message in and understand they are kids and they are still learning, but ultimately in the real world, your bosses, whoever it is you work for, or your college coaches, or what, that's not going to be acceptable. So a lot of it is just being able to grow with these kids, understanding that they're going to be in a lot of situations or circumstances that they're going to need to be able to grow from. So being able to, again, not only teach the game, teach the fundamentals of the game, the basketball IQ side of it, but also just being able to teach a little bit about life. During my 2 hours at practice, I need to be able to not only teach the game, but also talk to these kids a little bit, talk to them about experiences they're having, and just making sure we're all growing and I'm doing my job as a teacher, not only teaching basketball, but teaching a little bit about life.
And it's something I think is even more, you know, unique to your situation too. I've had a couple guests who've been in this situation, but the fact that for you as a teacher, if I remember correctly, you're teaching at the elementary level too.
Right.
So the way that you may explain things, the way that you may teach things, right? To go from teaching in a elementary school environment to then going to the high school side of things and talking to kids of that age. Is that something that are there things you can take from teaching kids and working with kids at an elementary age that kind of apply to high school? Is there not much of an overlap of it? I'm just curious because that's such a unique situation, I think, for you to be in.
Right. So, I mean, for instance, last week we were doing PE basketball for my first graders. I'm teaching them how to dribble. I'm teaching them, all right, let's dribble in lines. Let's do a jump stop. Let's follow with a bounce pass. So we're creating an environment where they're learning the game. But you're understanding that your expectations are a lot of these kids have never played before. They're learning not only they're learning the game, they're learning, how to coexist with other kids in an environment like that. So they're more in that introductory stage where you got to take more time and you got to be patient with them, and then you well, go through your day, end up and it's 5 o'clock and now you're at a varsity boys basketball practice where you're dealing with 14 to 17-year-old kids. The way you attack that is going to be completely different. You're going to have
Sure.
certain expectations where um that they might not meet, and you expect them to meet it because they're high school kids. You've been playing this game for the X amount of years. You should be able to do this. We want you to keep working at this. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't work out like that, and you still got to go back to that. I'm a first grade teacher. I know how to be patient. I need to be patient in this situation.
Yeah,
And
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, just that's it.
Yeah, just it's funny how just the communication styles that you might have because I've been that in that situation before teaching like I taught a class of sixth graders once and it's funny talking to sixth graders and then later in the day talking to high school seniors that
Hmm.
there is a lot of the same delivery or the same cadence or the same way I instruct, especially if it's something new to them or something that I need to
Right.
be really patient about. There's a significant amount of overlap in that, and I think like you hit a really good point about just that patience and being able to understand that like they're not going just like content wise, right? They're not going to get something necessarily right away the first time, and you have all the
Right.
knowledge, but they don't. So you have to kind of be patient with the way you explain things for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah, and it's a different level of patience with I've worked with kids young as 3 years old all the way to 17.
Oh
So
wow, yeah.
you gotta you gotta just be realistic. You gotta be realistic, but also regardless of what level, you gotta have some sort of patience. You gotta have some sort of understanding that they're learning and they're not yourself.
Hmm.
Someone who thinks, growing up playing basketball, learn how to dribble with your left hand when you're in third grade. Not every kid had that upbringing. Not every kid was
Must
as
be nice.
passionate as you were at a young age. So you need to understand that and not compare them to yourself all the time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about the story of building a program to where you get that total program buy-in. And I don't know if you're gonna want to approach this from your old stop or from your current stop or meld, both of them together. That's perfectly fine. But I'll let you kind of explain the process for what was it like to try and build that situation where everybody's bought in. Things like how long did it take? What were the stumbling blocks you came across? What was that journey in general like?
Right. So I'll start. I've been in places, but I'll start with Villanova,
Okay.
because I think it's a good way to kind of go into Nordoff and just kind of how things worked out. At Villanova, I touched on it before. We started 0-4,
Hmm.
and we had the team had expectations for themselves that weren't 100% realistic at the time. When I was hired, like I said before, I was hired 2 weeks before the season started. So we started 0-4, and I told the kids in the locker room after a tournament, and hey guys, like we need to put something into perspective. You guys haven't had a coach since May. You guys haven't had a basketball practice for the school since May, and now it's November 15th, and we just started practicing on October 31st on Halloween. So they were going shoot, I don't even know how many months, 3 or 4 months without having any team practices. Like, of course, we're
Yeah.
not going to be playing as good as we think we might want to play. Like, we have to be realistic with our expectations at this point. So, we had a talk in that locker room at the Moore Park tournament, just about being realistic and understanding if we want to get to where we need to be at the end of the season, we're going to have to come together, and we're going to have to understand that I am the coach. I'm still getting to know you guys. I'm still, quite frankly, learning kids' names. I mean, I've been there for 2 weeks, so
Mhm.
we really had to come together at that time, and we did. So we started 0-4. After that game, we went 22-5. After we had a good talk, a couple of our leaders were clashing because one wasn't getting enough shots, and the other one thought he was being selfish. And I told and this is while we're winning, we started winning, but we were still having these little clashes eternally. So we just had to I had to have conversations with kids. So a lot of what you're doing sometimes is you're counseling these kids, these boys or these girls, depending on who you're coaching, and getting them to not only, again, buy in, but to understand that we need you to act a certain way and do a certain thing if we want to be successful. If you guys are clashing about who's getting the most shots or who's not passing the ball to who, and we're not taking those necessary steps to being a good team, we're not going to be where we need to be at the end. So we're not going to make it where we want to get if we're having these clashes. So we had those conversations. Things got better. The kids not only bought into me because I was taking time out of my day to solve these problems, but just getting to know them during those conversations and those meetings. Talking to kids about what's going on in their personal life, why they might be sad, or things they're going through, and just providing them an outlet to someone to talk to. So they looked at me as someone they could trust. I had a meeting with Slade Lowe, one of our star shooters, and he was like, after our conversation, after I was, listening to him out and getting to know him a little bit, he was like, "Coach, I'm ready to play hard for you now." Um,
Wow.
and having those conversations and kind of getting out of your shell, and understanding that sometimes it's bigger than basketball, and if you take those necessary steps, it might benefit basketball, if you're willing to be a person first to some of these kids. So yeah, we had those conversations. We came together. We understood what we had to do as a team and what individual roles were and how we were going to succeed. And the kids bought into that. And when we're winning, it's a lot easier. The parents are a lot happier,
Yeah.
and,
Here's a lot of things.
yeah, exactly. So didn't have a whole lot of pushback from the parents after that. They might have been mad at me that I kept their kids in the locker room for 45 minutes and told them what we needed to do to get better. But that was really it. And after that, we had that conversation, and then we had multiple conversations with different guys about those things, and we saw success.
And that process, and you certainly know this, that process of having kids trust you and getting to know you, that is not
Right.
a immediate thing. There's no
No.
immediate like thing where it's like, okay, I got their trust completely and it'll never be tested and everything's good and we can just hit the ground running. And not only is it an ongoing process to continue to build, but it's never done, and it also can always be taken away from
Right.
in an instant from a bad misstep or something you say or something that you do that doesn't align to what you were preaching before. Like
Yeah.
it's never done.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. So kind of, with Nordoff is initially we started 0-10. So, I'm sure parents weren't too happy that we were 0-10.
Mhm.
Kids weren't too happy about how much they were playing or what position they were playing. Um, so you had to work through those things, and we're still trying to get to where we need to be. But we're more closer now than we have been all season in the locker room. The locker room feels good. And we're fighting through this together, and there was that one time where you're 0-10 and it's like, oh man, I don't know when we're going to win a game. People start feeling that pressure. And it can be tough. It can be draining. It can be mentally exhausting. Uh, you know, so it's something that as a coach you need to understand that you could be taking on that responsibility. Not only can you take on the responsibility of you could be leading your team to victory and everyone loves you and all those things, but when things are going bad, you're also in a position to where the coaches looked at as well. We see it every day with coaches. So just understanding that you're signing up for that as well.
So what do you think kept things together when you were at that lowest at 0-10? What do you attribute the team sticking together and not completely just going south and sideways to?
Right. So, you hear things and from your coaches, or you overhear conversations from players, and kids are coming late now, and it seems like we're not committed because we're losing. Is just trying your best to motivate and understand that we're in this together. Everyone's new. That's been a big thing for us, is keeping those expectations realistic again. Is not one of us played varsity last year. I wasn't your guys' coach last year. So really just trying to get these kids to understand that um, we have a lot of work to do, and it's not going to always be, perfect. And we need to take necessary steps to get there. So really just making sure you're having open communication with your kids, you're having conversations with them. We had 5 or 6 meetings individually with kids about roles, about redefining their roles, and making it easier for them to succeed, and giving them the answers that, hey coach, how can I earn more playing time? Well, we need you to work on X, Y, and Z. And seeing them focus on those things in their own time and in practice ultimately is what's going to help them earn those more opportunities, and just making sure your coaches are relaying the same messages. So you can't have coaches going in different directions as well. That's like it's one of their biggest things, is you can't have one coach saying one thing to the team, another saying another. And if your players you can see that your coaches aren't on the same page, how is the team going to be on the same page? So again, that's understanding that we all need to do what is necessary, and try to buy into that culture of the coaches are relaying exactly what they want to their kids, and the kids are ultimately trying to achieve and work towards those things.
And with that answer, you made a point about how important it is if you're going through that process where things are being tested, that you can have those conversations with your players and talk about their role or talk about things they need to continue to work on and continue to improve at and be doing, while at the same time also ha- going into those conversations knowing that your relationship with that player is strong enough that they trust you. Because I
Right.
know it's really easy for teams going 0-8, 0-9, for players to think that the coach has no idea what they're doing or what they're talking
Yep.
about. I don't need to listen to anything that they say. But I think it speaks a lot to what you were building, that you could have those conversations and they still be really productive, and the players are listening and bought into the message that you were saying.
Yeah, no, that's 100% the case, and some kids and some players you have are easier to talk to. They're more willing to talk than other, or and some people that maybe they feel nervous to come talk to coach, or or whatever it may be. Again, it just all goes back to trust. I've only been there for a couple months,
Yeah.
and like I said previously, I thought that because I did it this way at Villanova, and then whoa, things worked, that I could do it here and things would be just the same. But I have to be, again, willing to adjust, willing to get these kids, willing to do what's necessary to get these kids and everyone in the school to trust me. So we're getting there. I think the vision's still clear, and we got a good group that I think is coming around.
So you had that test, like I said, where you're at that low point and you kind of overcome that. You start to dig yourself out, and things start to improve, and you've spoken about the improvements that have been made since that 0-10 start. Once you started to see a little bit of success, and once the players started to see a little bit of success themselves, what did you start to see in your program that really made you get the sense like, all right, not only are these guys bought in, but I can really tell that we're building something here? Was there a moment? Was there something that happened that really made you think like, all right, we're really starting to trend in the right direction here?
Yeah, so two things. We played against Fillmore High School. It was a huge league game for us on a Friday night last week, and the game was a low scoring bloodbath. Final ended up being 43-38. We pulled it out by 5. and we just, just being with the boys, seeing the team, being a close game, seeing the bench involved, cheering for each other, everyone getting playing time, everyone getting, some sort of playing time where they, even if it's for 2 minutes or 6 minutes, they're going in there and they're trying to execute their job and do what the coach asks. So the energy was just there that night. It just felt right. We've been struggling to find our identity on defense. This team had a really good player that was, he's averaging double digits. He's creating his own shot. And we threw a box and one at him. So we said, all right, we're going to take away their best player. The fourth quarter, that player got a little frustrated, and we ended up fouling him out of the game. So our practice of getting in a box and one and buying into that, we're playing 4-on-4, and he's going to try to take their best player out. It worked. So after preparing and practicing for 3 days, trying to run it against the scout team, seeing it work in a game was just, wow. Like we tried to make it, we made an adjustment to win a game, and it worked. And then afterwards, the kids are all excited. They're going crazy for each other in the locker room. That was a big win for us and a big win for our program. So after we had that, now kids are getting in extra time in the gym. They're texting my assistant coaches, actually asking if they can get on the shooting machine, getting extra work in with our skill development coach. But yeah, that moment was a big turnaround for our team. I can't say definitively that that's going to will us into the playoffs or anything like that. We're going to do what we can. But because of that win, a lot of our mentalities switched as players. Like, okay, like we won a close game after struggling, and now we're in a position to make the playoffs after this terrible start. Like we gotta keep going. So that was a big turning point for us.
And you mentioned about using this box and one and how you're able to install that into a practice and run that in practice. And I wanted to talk about practices when you have a team that's bought in, and you're coming in as a new coach. You have a new, I'm sure, practice style or new expectations of how you want to see those practices run. So when you think about the idea of a team being bought in and running a practice effectively with a bought in team, what are you able to do with these guys knowing that they're bought in? How are you able to run and do your practices in a way that you wouldn't be able to do if they weren't bought into what was going on in the program?
Right. So a lot of that is kind of what I just touched on with, we don't have time at practice to work on everything that we need to work on. A lot of this needs to be accomplished in your own time. Whether you're shooting at a park or you're shooting at the gym, or you're getting extra reps in after practice or before practice. We got to be able to practice those things and practice whatever we need to practice on individually. That way at practice we can focus on what we need to focus on to get ready for the next game. So when you move through the season, you don't have so much time to work on the things that like skill stuff at practice. We don't have time for that all the time. We have to work on our defense. We have to work on our offense. Maybe we're gonna put in a new set, this couple new sets this week, because it's our second time around in league. We want to give the coaches we're competing against something that's not on film. So we're working on preparing for games. We're working on what we're watching film. Okay, we got to work on boxing out today at practice. We're not going to have time to work on free throws. We're not going to have time to do ball handling because we have other things that we know are our weak spots and what we need to work on to prepare for the next game. So our practices, obviously, I before season I like to practice for 2 hours before season starts. During season, I'm an hour and a half. I like the kids to get in. We got a plan. We know the expectation for practice. I talk about what we're going to be working on at practice the next day. Try to get these kids mentally prepared for it, and then just go attack the day in a way that's going to benefit either our next game or whatever it is we got coming up.
And that's a real nice advantage of having a bought-in program, is that you can get as much, if not more, done in less time, especially in practices. As players are, tired or they're worn out or, they got other things going on, to be able to know that, like, hey, we can get in and out in an hour and a half and we'll make the most of it. And then, we already have the culture established, or the practice culture. We don't have to waste time with a lot of other stuff. We can really use this time efficiently, and then, make sure every minute counts, but then send you on your way to do other things and get other stuff taken care of. I think, at least I know, as somebody who's been able to do that, some of the time, like players love that, and I think it
Yeah.
may even makes your practices better and that much more focused, knowing you're only getting them, 90 minutes. I think there's something to be said for like a 90-minute really focused practice versus trying to necessarily cram every possible thing you can, even in 2 hours or more.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. Our practices are detailed, but we don't want to give them too many things to focus on. If we really want to, you know, work on our defense for tomorrow, that's what we're going to work on. We're not going to work on a bunch of other stuff, but we really need to hone in on one thing. So, yeah, it's about being efficient at practice. Maybe it's a couple things you need to work on at your practices, but you factor that into your practice plan, and you make sure you're organized. As a coach, I have been a coach before. Oh, I was busy this day. I was running around for work. I was doing a bunch of stuff, and then I go to practice, and I don't have I have things in mind that I might want to work on, but I don't list them out in a practice order per se with minutes allocated for each thing, and the practices aren't as good. So it's preparing, and making sure what you're working on is the right thing, and a lot of that is I find on my couch watching film that okay, this is what we need to work on, identifying those your strengths and your weaknesses, and really hammering those at practice.
Along the concept of getting players or bought in on the same line. Of course, there's more people in a program involved. There's other stakeholders. It's a big educational term, I know,
Mhm.
about people who are involved in the program or who have buy-in and want to see the program succeed. So I wanted to ask you about what went into covering the aspects of making sure that parents, administration, coaches, that other coaches on staff were bought in, believed in you, and that they were a part of the process of being a part of the program and its success as well.
Right. Yeah. So, obviously, when you interview, I wanted to stress the fact that I've been able to lead a program to success and doing it in a shorter period of time. Obviously, being my first year at the school, it was an accomplishment. So I hung my hat on that a lot during my interview, and that was about getting the team to buy in, and then getting the program to buy in, like you said. So when I got over to Nordoff, no, I had to convince the administration that my vision for the program was the right one, and ultimately I did that. Following that, we did a couple of summer stuff, a little summer stuff, some fall stuff, with the lower numbers that we had with kids in football. As football came to conclusion, we had a parent meeting, and I was very transparent with my expectations, had those drawn out, had the parents sign into the meeting, so I know that they um, heard me and my expectations. So just having allocating time and making sure that you're being transparent. Not to backtrack a little bit, but before this parent meeting, obviously I had to have a coaches meeting.
For sure.
We had to have a meeting with amongst the coaches, about what each of us bring to the table, what are our strengths, what do you want to focus on. I had my coach Dan Placial, my assistant coach. He came in, and he's going to be only our JV coach, but he's going to be our defensive guy for our varsity team. And then we have Coach Probin, who's a legend, by the way. Shout out Coach Probin, been at Nordoff for 49 years. So he had already been there for years. So just picking his brain a little bit at the meeting. He's dealt with parents in the community for a long time. So he's our Frosh soft coach now. And just in getting his ideas, his experiences. And then we had Coach Taylor Smith could be our development coach, our skill development coach, and helping out on all levels with that. So everyone has their roles. Everyone contributes. We all, um, you know, bring our strengths to the table. So really, just kind of getting roles for the coaches is the first thing, right? What are we going to focus on as a coaching staff? And so you have that parent meeting, and the parents come. Kids sign something that they heard it as well, and then things don't always go perfect. A big thing I wanted to instill was you know if you don't like something during the game, is I implemented the 24-hour rule, like that I got from Coach Jamal Brown at Foothill Tech, where hey, if you're a parent and you're upset with playing time, wait 24 hours before we make contact. Let's both reflect a little bit, and then that way we're not speaking emotionally, and that way we can collaboratively talk about something. So and then you have those instances where that doesn't always go the way you want. Parents or family members maybe reach out before, and and the conversations don't go as easy as they could, because we're acting on emotion, and then we all grow from those things though as well. So just keeping an open line of communication with parents, letting them know that their voice can be heard, and I understand that everyone has their reasons for what they think and what they believe. So let's
Yeah.
hear them. But just trying to get everyone to respect the boundaries, rules, and those things is a big one. And it's going to take. It could be quick, like it was at Villanova. It could take a little more time, like it has been at Nordhoff. But again, it's all a challenge, and something you got to know what you're signing up for when you're signing up to be a head coach.
And I think as a coach, you have to be prepared, just like as you are with a teacher, right? That the things that you say in a parent meeting obviously are great, and it makes sense to everybody in the parent meeting because emotions aren't high in a parent meeting. Things are usually pretty positive, things are pretty good, but
Right.
it's how does it survive that first, stress test, those things
Yep.
that you laid out. And I think parents and players are going to test those things. They're going to see if that's actually true, what it is that you stand by or what it is that you stand on, because, it all sounds great in practice, but does this coach actually mean these things? Are they going to hold accountable to him? And it's hard to, right? And you can
Yeah.
speak to that, right? It's hard to at times, but if it mattered to you in that parent meeting that you had at the beginning of the season, it definitely should still matter to you during the season. Otherwise, I think as a coach, you got to do a lot of reflection as to why the things that are, you're preaching in the season don't reflect what you're talking about in that parent meeting.
Absolutely. You hit it on the head with that. So it's really just holding to your values, and and just being consistent, but also being open to having those conversations with parents. If you say you're going to be transparent, and you're going to do the best you can in that regard, then you need to do that as and we're still learning. I'm 30 years old. I would say I'm still a young head coach for I don't know how much longer, but I will be. And I'm still learning. I need to understand that experience I had where we won our Southern Section championship isn't going to be every situation. And just because you're on the peak of the mountaintop now doesn't mean you can't be somewhere else a year later.
Yeah.
And just being able to understand that each situation's different. And yeah.
So your comment about the conversations you have with parents, because I love that 24-hour rule. That's something that I really try to stick to as well, and have laid out to parents. It reminded me, and I don't know if I've actually ever mentioned this before in any of these episodes, so I guess this is as good a time as any. But one of the things I know that I talk to about with parents when parents have questions or concerns is, and I'm sure you know this, right? Parents will come and they will compare their player with another player, or they'll talk about,
Right.
another
Yep.
player. And one of the things that I've always done, and hopefully this may help some coach out there, is I always tell parents that I will never talk about another player, and sometimes I'll even use the term, I will never talk about another parent's child to you, but I also will not talk about your child to any other parent either.
Right. And I
Think
think
that
that's
that
fair.
that 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 will quell a lot of conversations that parents have when they want to try and bring down somebody else or compare somebody else. So if that helps anyone, feel free to use
Yeah.
it.
No, I think that's great, because sometimes you have conversations. Well, my son could do this, and why is this kid playing if he's, it's like, well, it's ultimately the coach is in charge of those decisions, and and when you bring up someone else's kid, that's the territory you don't want to be in.
Yeah, that can get ugly real
Yep.
quick. That's for sure. Um,
Right.
so On the court, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about what you like to run from an offensive and defensive standpoint, and
Mm.
where does that program buy-in really show itself in terms of the way you're able to execute the things you want to offensively and defensively.
Right. So a lot of the offense I run, shout out Coach Samples at University of Dallas. He called it Kansas. I called it Nova when I was at Nova, and I call it Ranger now that I'm at Nordhoff. Is just spread 4 out 1 in with the ball screener in the middle. A guy in the middle can also be your playmaker. We're dribble handoffs. We're passing and cutting. We're passing the screen away. But we're trying to spread the floor. And get driving lanes to the basket, create some open shots if the defense converges. Setting high ball screens with the proper spacing, making sure that anyone off the ball, or off the ball screen is staying wide and being ready to catch and shoot. So spreading the floor is a big one. Playing with pace. I got to play with pace. I I don't want the defense to be set up, so it doesn't necessarily mean we need to run down there, run and gun, and shoot a shot in 7 seconds. That's not what I'm saying. But let's push the ball with some tempo where our defense isn't able to set up. So that's ideally the offense I want to run. Now, when you're running your offense and you have certain personnel, you're going to have to tweak some things, right? Some people Jim Boeheim has the ability to run a 2-3 zone at Syracuse, and those are the guys he recruits, and that's what they run. And they have long arms, and they know how to run that zone for him. At the high school level, you don't have the luxury of picking every single kid out of and I want this type of kid to play this position. Personnel is going to change, so you have to be willing to make those adjustments. And then that goes for your defense as well. What can this team do? I have an athletic team. Okay, we might be a pressing team this year. We're slow on our feet, but we got big bodies. Maybe we pack it in and play a packed man with a pack line defense, or we're a 2-3 team because we got a big guy in the middle and we're playing against a lot of teams that aren't great outside shooters. So I like man defense. Pack line defense. That's my favorite. That's what I grew up learning. Being in the right spot,
Mhm.
rotating, being in the gap. Jumping with the pass. Talking on the weak side. Doing those shell drills. Ultimately, if we could play man, that's what I want to do. And being able to, if we can run switch five, where we got 5 guys on the floor that can switch dribble handoffs, ball screens, down screens, and we're talking, we're communicating, that's the defense I want to run. Now, with this group this year, we've done some of that, but I've found that us running a matchup zone, kind of like a 1-2-2, has been the most beneficial for us. So, I mean, like I said before, we threw a box and one out on someone, and it's worked in a couple games now. So, um, that's just something we as a coaches have decided. Well, we're not great in man, and we're still learning our zone. Is this something we could try? So we did that. But yeah, just being able to, yeah, you have your ways, you have your vision, things you want to do, things you want to run. But you got to be able to also mess with those things a little bit, and give yourself and the team the best chance of winning the game.
I mean, just talking about things like pack line and things of that nature, like the amount of communication needed, right? And I think that if you're
Right.
going to have anything that involves a lot of communication and a lot of decision making, and even um, in some instances where players have a little bit of autonomy on offense, all of that comes to players needing to be able to trust each other, be able
Yep.
to want to work together, to be on the same page. And I don't know if there's anything you can really run on offense or defense without there that being that communication. But no things that you mentioned, especially on the defensive end, the amount of work that needs to be done where everybody's working as one and together, like to have that culture piece built in will just I imagine just has to improve your defense immensely by having
Yeah.
that installed.
Yeah, and a big part of that is, obviously trusting the coach to put you in the best position to succeed. But like you mentioned, is trusting each other that, hey, if I close out baseline side, I know my help's going to be coming from the middle. I need to trust that my teammate's going to be there for me. I got to know if coach has us in a man defense where I'm fronting the post, my backside's there if he throws it over the top. If a guy attacks from a certain spot on the floor, your teammates are in the gap, they're ready to defend. So that's all that trust thing. That's all that communication. And we struggled with that in the beginning, not having that communication. We had players that played JV and Frost Soft last year, playing varsity this year, and
Yeah.
at that level, they're working on things and they're doing a great job learning. But they haven't played on a varsity game where if you're late to rotate, the ball's already through the net. If you fail to communicate, the guy already cut through the lane, was untouched, has a layup. So really understanding that the game moves a lot quicker at the varsity level, that communication has become key. So yeah, big one.
As you start to think about the future, you're in year one in in this particular instance, and so for as much work as you have done, there is of course a lot more work still
Right.
ongoing. And so, what's next as you look towards the future and as you look towards where you want to go, not just for the rest of the season, but beyond that? Where do you still see the room for improvement and growth for the buy-in to get even stronger?
Right. So we only have one senior on our roster, so we are extremely young. We our JV team has some guys that can certainly come and contribute at the varsity level next year. So we have some guys coming up that are definitely going to be helping us, and the guys coming back are playing big minutes this year. So really, one of the things is just getting these kids playing more. So I'm actually in March. We're going to be starting up a club basketball program in the Ojai Valley, called Gold Coast Hoops, and that's just a lot of it is just to get these kids out there playing. There's no club team up in there in the valley. The closest one is about 30 minutes away. So
Mhm.
these kids just need more experience. They just need to play more. So our coaching staff is all on board. It's gonna be the same coaches that were got at Nordoff. And just getting these kids playing more, teaching them the game, putting them in situations where they got to use their IQ, and working on not only the necessary skills it takes to succeed, but learning the game through the brain and about where to be and what to anticipate. And if this happens, what's going to happen next? And yeah, it's just so we're a big thing is us is just getting these kids playing more. A lot of the kids that played for us not only didn't play varsity last year, but hadn't played club in a couple of years because of COVID. And then when they got to high school, there was no club team in the area.
Yeah.
So it's just getting these kids playing more is a big vision for us. Giving them more experience playing against better competition, taking them out of their comfort zone. And yeah, we're excited. Obviously, we're still focused on this season and still trying to make the playoffs. But our future, we got some kids that are bought in and they want to get better. And yes, coach, yes, sir. What can I do? Working on things we need to work on. But having them play club basketball is going to be a big one for them. As we can go down to Orange County and play at Open Gym Premier, or we can go over to the Sports Academy in Thousand Oaks and play games there. So just putting them in those experiences and giving them opportunities to compete against good competition is going to help them a lot.
No, and I like that a lot of just like kind of continuing to build the momentum of what you're doing by giving them that club outlet to just sort of keep going, right? Like you see it
Right.
go from there and then keep building it from there, especially with the continuity of coaches. Because I know that always gets a little bit messy sometimes when you have different coaches who have different philosophies and they talk about, oh, my
Yep.
high school coach says this, my club coach says this, but you don't
Right.
have to really worry about that. It's gonna be streamlined pretty nicely.
Yeah, so we're gonna focus on. We know that we're gonna have some kids that don't play for us. At Nordoff, there's gonna be some other kids in the area who come from other high schools. But ultimately, we are gonna be teaching the same things we're teaching and trying to stress. So yeah, just that we can get as good as we want, be as committed as we want during the season. But if these kids don't play again until mid-October, we're not gonna be where we need to be next year. So yeah, just getting them extra opportunities.
Yeah, no, I love that, coach. Before we hit our concluding segment, I wanted to ask you specifically. We do have some listeners, I'm sure, who are going to be in the situation kind of where you were in, where they're going to go into a program, they're looking to get that, you know, program completely bought in, but maybe, they're going to be in a rebuild situation, or maybe they're going to come into a situation where there's maybe been some difficulties in the past. So I wanted to give you the a question of what advice would you give to somebody to do maybe like week one or right when they get that position to really start off on the right foot and building that buy-in?
Right. So, first thing is I would say is having a meeting with the team. Introducing yourself, introducing not only your philosophies and all that, but also your background, why you got the job, and what you did to work for it. And understanding that I'm not claiming to be a perfect coach by any means, but I do feel qualified for the position, and this is why I got it, and this is the vision I have for it. So just being transparent with those kids, having those meetings, and really just understanding that when you go into it, you have to be willing to make changes if necessary. You're not gonna have the same talent level always. You're not gonna have the same population of kids always. You're not gonna have the same support from outside parents or community, or things are just aren't always the same. And if you're a young head coach, or you want to be a head coach, or you have experience being a head coach, and where you're constantly learning, you have to understand that you're going into this and you have these expectations, and I want to get there by doing X, Y, and Z to accomplish our goals for the season. There's going to be things that come up that are going to make you have to reevaluate how you do things. So really, it's just going in with an open mind. You got to be able to think on the fly. You got to be able to identify what the program needs, not only on the court but off the court, and being able to experience all those the things you're going to go through, and you're going to learn from it, you're going to grow from it, but just be willing to adjust. Know that you don't know everything, even when sometimes you think you might. Something's going to happen and be like, oh wow, I could have done this. Or but yeah, just be willing to adjust. Come with an open mind is a big one.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot, and like I can feel from your answer kind of one of the things I can kind of take out of that is, you enter this program, but to never make any assumptions as to what things were like before, or what the team's like, or
Right.
what the parents are like. Like an outsider can never really like truly know what that is, and so you don't want to come in with these preconceived notions of anything, because I think that leads to, if you're not 100% right on those assumptions, you're going to be probably saying, some incorrect things or doing some incorrect things. Like you said, kind of blank slate, open minded, and,
Yep.
just kind of evaluate it on exactly what it is that you see in that meeting, rather than things you might hear from the outside, or any, stereotypes or things that you might think of from there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You got to know that what you're doing is bigger than yourself. There's going to be a lot of people that you're going to have to try to keep happy. And there's a lot of it that you're going to have to spend time away from your family at times. And even sometimes when you're at home, you are thinking about the team. How can we get better? So a lot goes into it. The life of a coach is is a special calling for someone. And whether you're an assistant at a level, or you're the head coach, or you have aspirations to be a head coach, just know you're doing a good thing. And sometimes you might struggle. There'll be times of triumph, but you just got to grow through those. You got to be willing to adjust, and try to see it through others' eyes as well. How do they see you? And yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great, Coach. I wrote that down, so I can pass this along, because I know I'm going to have some people maybe in my own circle who might be in that situation. So
Yeah.
we appreciate that. To wrap up, Coach, there's a couple questions I ask every guest. So starting with this first one, and I know you've shared so many great ones, so hopefully you have another one that you can share. But thinking back on your coaching career, what is a moment that you went through in your coaching career that you think others that are listening would be able to learn from?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that we can learn from this is, my first year at Villanova, I it thinks people a lot of people think, oh, it was peaches and cream, and you guys won section championship, and you were the Ventura County Coach of the Year. That was all great, and I thought I knew how to do everything.
Hmm.
I was in a position where, oh my God, I'm such a good coach. I won a championship, and then you step away from that and you realize that yes, that was awesome and that was great, but you are you are still learning. You are not a perfect coach. So whether things go good or bad, if they go good, you need to understand that that's great. You're gonna really be proud of yourself. You're gonna be proud of your team. You're gonna be proud of the community, and that feeling of bliss is awesome. But that's not always going to be that way. And in the game of high school sports, talent comes and goes. At some places, it stays longer than others. Um, but understanding that you can be at the top and you can think you know everything, and then you get punched in the mouth when you get to your next job, and you're questioning, "Dang, am I really that good of a coach? We're not winning. We're not doing what I was doing before." And some of that's a reflection of yourself. Some of that's a reflection of, the personnel in the program, and a lot. It's just collective. And knowing that if you want to succeed, you can have the vision, you can have all that for yourself and for the program, but you got to have kids that are willing to buy in. And if they're not, it's going to take some time and remaining patient, like we talked about earlier, through that. So just you're going to have moments where you succeed, but you need to really reflect on the moments that you aren't succeeding and understanding that there's still room for you to grow.
It truly is amazing. I feel like how day to day, week to week, you can go from feeling that you're a great coach to like, have I ever coached before? How
Yeah,
that feeling can change season to season, day to day. Sometimes but yeah, like that. I think it's that overall hunger kind of that you kind of
right.
speak to, that desire to always get better and learn and never get complacent. Because, and I've talked about this with other guests, it's crazy how much this game continues to change and evolve. And I feel like once you think you've got it and you feel like you know it all, like the game's gonna pass you by real quick.
Yep. Yeah. So that's it just goes back to that is being willing to adjust. You
Hmm.
gotta you gotta come out of your comfort zone and understand that just because you did it this way before doesn't mean it's going to work this time. Or yeah, just be willing to make those adjustments for yourself, for your team. Um, and if there's certain things you stand by, you can bend, but you don't have to break. But yeah, just be willing to do that, those sacrifices.
Awesome. Coach, to wrap up, I give every guest what I call a 60-second soapbox, but I'm not going to time you. So if you go over 60 seconds, that's perfectly okay. But I want to use that as a platform to kind of let you get out your final idea, a closing thought, a final message, something that you want to leave the listeners with. You are welcome to take it in any direction that you wish, but I'm going to go ahead now, Coach, and just kind of open up the floor to you, and I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thanks, Coach. Yeah, so just whatever you getting into the coaching field, know that if you're getting into it, one, you're not doing it for the money. Two, and two, you're doing it for the kids. I go to quote unquote work. My job is one of my part-time jobs to coach basketball. Just know that I'm there present while I'm doing it, and the kids deserve the best view that they could possibly get. And when you show up to practice, have that sense of it, have that energy that you want from your kids. You got to bring that same energy as well. And having, supportive spouse, if you have, is key, because there's going to be times where you're away from your family, and then when you're at home, you're up till midnight watching film. You're waking up at 5:30 in the morning thinking about what set's going to work tonight at the game. It's a lot, and I just want every coach that gets involved to know that you're gonna, and they already know most of them, but you're gonna go through these times where you're great, you're bad, but basketball, or you're coaching whatever sport you're coaching, it takes a lot, mentally, physically, and just know that you're doing it for something bigger than yourself. I have my coaches my coach told me, Coach, I'm so thankful to be working with you guys. You're really changing my life, and I'm helping change these kids' life, and I feel like I'm doing a great thing. That's what we want. We want people that want to coach, and impact these lives. So you're going with that direction and that goal to you're going to impact these young kids' lives. You're going to help them prepare for the real world, and yeah, just not cheating yourself out of that and knowing why you're doing it.
Awesome. That was really, really well said. And I really like leaving it on that note, Coach. I really appreciate you coming on here, talking about your journey as a coach, talking about the rebuild process, the idea of getting everyone bought in. I mean, it's so fun to hear kind of your story and hear all the things that are going on and the build as you start to build that momentum just in year one. So I'm excited to follow your journey, Coach. Best of luck the rest of the way. Best of luck next year. And again, thank you so much for being able to come on here and talk with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Coach Hernandez, and the Basketball Teacher Podcast. It's a great time. I'm happy to be on it, and I appreciate what you're doing, and look forward to talking soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.